If you enjoy this video, subscribe to Scarf and Goggles and check out our other content. The National Motor Museum at Beaulieu is home to Henry Segrave's 1000 horsepower Sunbeam land-speed record car. Powered by two V12 aero engines, at Daytona in 1927 it was the first car to exceed 200 miles per hour. Now the museum is restoring the Sunbeam to running condition and hopes to return it to Daytona in 2027, 100 years after Segrave set the record. In part 1, Beaulieu's senior engineer Ian Stanfield gave me a tour of the car's chassis, which has already been stripped down and inspected. Before we head behind the scenes to the museum's workshop, museum manager and chief engineer Doug Hill told me why they've decided to restore the 1000 horsepower Sunbeam and what Beaulieu's collection of land-speed record cars means to the museum.
These are our most well, they're the catalyst, the key of the collection. This is a highly iconic, amazing, highly important motor car, part of the British motoring history, and very, very important for our collection. We had been working on the 350 horsepower Sunbeam, and with the knowledge that we got from rebuilding that engine, we knew some of the issues that we could experience with these V12 Sunbeam aero engines. So we decided, whilst we had the use of an endoscope to look inside the crankcases of this motor car and actually find out what we suspected, that there was corrosion which would naturally occur with something like this that hasn't been used. We discovered it being worse than we actually hoped, and then that brought us on to, well, we know what to do, we know how to do it, particularly in Stanfield, so let's go for it and see if we can actually start the ball rolling to get this magnificent motor car actually working. To see 24 cylinders all firing at once in the same car will be absolutely amazing, and I will be very, very proud to see Stan be the first person to drive it, because he deserves it.
Away from the public galleries in the National Motor Museum lies the workshop, where Stan and his team maintain the museum's collection. In here, the Sunbeam's mechanical components are gradually giving up their secrets. The Sunbeam was famously call it a parts bin racer. It was famously assembled from stuff that was in the workshop. How true have you found that to be in being the archaeologist on this project?
It's not that true, basically, because everything on the car is bespoke. The gearbox, the spur gear unit, the bevel drive, the chassis, the axles, the wheels, the tyres, the brakes, everything is bespoke. So you weren't going to get anything off the shelf other than the engines, basically. The magnetos, yeah, well, they were standard magnetos. The fuel system is all bespoke. The air start system was used on other Sunbeam aero engines, but I mean, it was all part of the engine anyway, so it's not really a parts bin special, basically. Everything was made for this car, and we found that all the way through. Even the way they've put it together is unique. Sunbeam are terrible for threads, basically, because they had Whitworth threads, they had BSF threads, they had metric threads, and they had their own threads as well, so you never know what thread it's going to be until you take it apart. Everything goes in a little polythene bag, which you write on as to what it is. All these bolts here that I've just taken out of here will all go into a polythene bag and be labelled, and then put in a box so that they go back in the right place when you put them back together.
It's necessarily a forensic process.
It is, yeah.
There is no spare parts, there is no manual.
There's no spare parts, there's no manual, there's no documentation. Well, this is the transmission, basically. It's made up of three components. This centre section here is the actual gearbox, where you've got your 3 gears and your reverse gear, 3 forward gears and a reverse gear. On the back here is a bevel drive unit that takes the power from the gearbox, then takes it out through 2 shafts to the outside of the chassis, where you've got 2 sprockets, and then chain driven to the rear axle. And on the front of the gearbox here, and actually under this part here, is the clutch for the gearbox, which then goes on to the spur gear unit, which is on the bench over here, which I'm just about to strip out and inspect, and that goes onto the front of the gearbox here. So you've got the drive from both engines going into this one gear. So you've got the drive from the rear engine coming in from this side, and the drive from the front engine coming into this side. That turns this big gear here, which is called a spur gear, which drives another gear in here, which is the smaller of the 2 gears, and from that it goes through the clutch, which is on this side of the unit, and that goes into the gearbox. So all 3 components form the transmission of the car. So it's very unique. It's a one-off. Nobody's ever made another one, you know. So this is the last component of the transmission that we've got to strip and clean. I don't foresee any problems with it. The only real issue we have is that the oils have degraded so much that it's formed a sort of glue, shellac, a Loctite type material, so nothing actually comes apart. It won't rotate at the moment. It's solid, so I'm physically going to have to take everything out, clean it, re-lubricate everything, inspect the bearings, and then put it back together. We've been very lucky so far. We've had to replace very few bearings because they were very good quality and the oil has preserved them, even though it's turned to like a glue. But even that has stopped any corrosion attacking the bearings. And once we've got them clean, they're generally very, very good. So that will be the last bit of the transmission. So another week or so this will be finished.
The tendency for old oil to solidify had already been an issue for Stan and the team when they tackled the gearbox.
So this is the gearbox, and the main problems we had is the fact that the oil has degraded over the last 80 odd years, and it's formed a sort of glue type material, a shellac, and physically glued the gearbox together so nothing would rotate. So we've had to take every component out, take the bevel drive off the back of the gearbox, take the top off the gearbox, so that we could get inside the gearbox, and then literally strip out everything out so that we could get it to turn, because nothing would turn originally. Everything was stuck. Even the selector here, the selectors were stuck. You couldn't select a gear. So, but everything now works perfectly all right. It slides backwards and forwards, so we're quite happy with it at the moment.
And they had problems with second gear when they were at Daytona. Have you seen evidence of that in the gearbox?
Yeah, well, if you look at these gears here, you see the chipping on the outside of the gear. So when they were trying to select gear, because it was stiff to select, it with a straight cut gearbox, you have to get your gear changing right. Otherwise, if you miss the timing, it ends up grinding the end of the teeth, which it's done on here. So they had several problems with the gearbox. There's footage of it going down Daytona Beach with Segrave driving it, and a mechanic led along the body with his foot led up against one of the rear stubs of the exhausts, reaching into the cockpit area. Whether they tied him on or not, I don't know, but he must have been doing about 70 miles an hour down the beach while they're fiddling with the gear lever to try and find out what the problem was. Not a job I want to do. Once it's in top gear, which is this gear, it's basically a straight through gearbox. It connects a shaft right to the bevel drive, so you're not having to worry about gears anymore. But it's just selecting second gear was always the issue with it. I'd have to look it up to be absolutely accurate, but we know that first gear is something like 72 miles an hour, second is 120, something like that, and then obviously top gear is when it achieved the 200 mile an hour plus record. But first gear is 70 at least. There was a company called Turner Manufacturing Company in Wolverhampton, which was across the road from the Sunbeam works, and they were gear manufacturers. So it wouldn't surprise me that they actually made the gears for the gearbox. But unfortunately Turners don't exist anymore. So. This is a multi-plate clutch. I can't remember how many plates there are within this, but it's all metal to metal. You see this V-shaped area here? That increases its surface area, so it gets more grip when you when the clutch is, you know, in drive. A sort of it's a type called Healy Shaw, a very well known type of clutch arrangement in period. So and as far as we know, there's no issue with it whatsoever, because again it's done very little work. But both the clutch and the brakes were servo operated. So
is that advanced for its time?
It is quite advanced for its time. I mean, Campbell used it on his next Bluebird as well, but it just means you don't have to, you know, go weight training to operate the clutch. The steering lock on this isn't too bad. The biggest problem with it is, although it's got the bevel drive on the back of the gearbox, there's no differential. So at slow speeds, it's very difficult to turn it around in a small area. While we were cleaning out the oil tank for the engines, because these engines are dry sump engines, so you've got scavenge pumps that return the oil to an oil tank, and the oil tank then feeds the engine. And while we're trying to clean the oil out of them in our hot water tank, we kept shaking and shaking the tank to get the old oil out. It then started to rattle. We thought one of the baffles in the tank had come loose, and we were contemplating whether we had to take the end of the tank out to get at it. And as we kept shaking it, this screwdriver fell out of it. So it was obviously being used as a dipstick through one of the engineers, and he actually dropped it inside the oil tank, and because of where it is and the pressures of running the car, he couldn't get it out again. So it's stayed there since 1927. So it's your first 200 mile an hour screwdriver. Wonderfully preserved by the oil.
In the next part, we'll take a look at the restoration of the Sunbeam's engines, and Stan gives us a tour of the car's sleek bodywork, still on display in the museum, alongside the other Landspeed cars in the collection. My thanks to Ian Stanfield, Doug Hill and the team at the National Motor Museum for their help in making this video. If you'd like to find out more about how work on the car is progressing, or make a donation to the restoration campaign, check out the link to the National Motor Museum's website in the description. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 3.